Okay, hello and welcome to Abnormal Psychology once again. Today we're doing chapter 3. Okay, so from this chapter on, hopefully you'll be able to see my screen, the PowerPoints, other things I show you, and then you're also going to see a little screen of me. I try not to look at it while I'm doing this because it's weird to look at yourself while you're talking. So anyway, bear with me. Okay, so today it should be a little bit more fun than the other first two chapters, and that is that we are going to talk about assessment materials. Now, you really only do assessments if you end up with a graduate degree in psychology, but it's always good to know. You know me, I'm big on critical thinking skills. So I like you to know this information. I like you to understand how we diagnose, how we come to clinical decisions, all of those types of things. Okay, you ready? Let's go. All right, so today we're going to talk about the clinical interview. We're going to talk about intelligence testing. We're going to talk about personality testing. And then we're going to talk some about behavioral assessments. Right? So let's just start with basics here, and that is that psychological assessment is a procedure in which a clinician, meaning a psychologist, someone like that, provides a formal evaluation. Okay, so it's a formal evaluation of an individual's cognitive, personality, and psychosocial functioning, or one of those things. Typically, we want to gather as much data as possible. Okay, this is, a broad range of measurement techniques that are used. Okay, and we're going to talk about a bunch of different ones of those. We want things to be scoreable. Generally, we want things to be data. We want things to be science. We want more than one piece of information. I've taught classes on assessment at the graduate level, and one of the biggest pieces of information I want them to know is that you never make a diagnosis based on one assessment only. So if I gave one of these tests that we're going to talk about to somebody and never spoke to them, I would never actually give them a diagnosis based on that, because that's only one piece of data. We need more than one. And really, we need the clinical interview to be a piece of that. Okay? And we'll talk about that in a minute. What makes good psychological tests? Now, you know these words from the last chapter. Reliability. We want it to consistently produce the same scores. Validity. The extent to which a test measures what it's designed to measure, right? And this word we didn't use before, and that's standardization. Standardization is like a psychometric criterion, if you remember that word, that clearly specifies a test's instructions for administering and scoring. So that is, it is standardized, meaning if I give the test, if she gives the test, if he gives the test, everybody gives the test the exact same way, and it is scored the exact same way. Okay, that's standardization. We want things to be evidence-based, and that's what we've talked about before. This is really important. We want to ensure that they are using the best assessment methods possible. We as clinicians, right, want to adhere to the principles of evidence-based assessment. We also talk about evidence-based treatment or evidence-based assessment. We look at research findings. We use psychometrically strong measures, meaning they have sound standardization, sound scoring, all of these things. And we want to empirically evaluate the assessment process. So we want to make sure that we are doing it in a standardized way, that the person speaks the language that they're supposed to speak for this assessment, that the person is from cultures that this assessment has been measured on, that, lots of these kinds of things, okay? There's something called the Barnum Effect. The Barnum Effect is named after, the circus, okay? And the idea of, Barnum and Bailey and all that, which, so here's the thing. You go out and you get a horoscope and you read it and you think, oh my gosh, that's so me, or how did they know? Well, the idea is that we use these super vague BS statements, right? They're so vague that they could really work for anyone. You see these types of people also that, work in rooms that, they predict the future, or they do whatever they do, and they say, does anybody have, somebody who died with the name that starts with a B? And people are like, oh, how did you know, right? Super generic statements. With assessment measures, we used to have assessments that at the end we would say, this person is someone who, is really stressed in situations that are frustrating, but also rises to the occasion when needed. And everybody says, oh my gosh, how did they know? I definitely do that. Well, that's because they're vague, generic statements. We want to make sure that we're not doing that, right? We want to make sure that we have psychometrically evidence-based, psychometrically sound, evidence-based assessments, and that we're not just giving vague BS statements to make ourselves look like we know what we're talking about. So that. Do know the word Barnum Effect for your exam. Okay, so let's talk about the clinical interview.